What is going on, guys? Welcome back. It's Josh. Quick explanation of the tiers here. Tier 0 is going to be core. These are the units that will probably shape the meta when it comes to building a team around certain characters, or there's going to be like maybe one standout character that's just so flexible that they go right into the tier 0 core category. Tier 0.5, listen, some of the best characters in the game. We didn't have 0.5 tier last time, but I think we need to have it this time. These are gonna be some of the best characters you can have in your setup, and you're going to do wonders with them. Tier 1 is still a fantastic character, but maybe just a little bit underutilized currently. Maybe they need a little bit more cooking. Maybe I'm underrepresenting them as well, but a lot of the times you're still going to have a solid character in the tier 1 category. Tier 2 is going to be someone who's usable, but honestly, if you just used someone from the higher categories, you'd have a better time. And tier 3 is going to be a category of characters that I really do not recommend. All right, so let's tackle the first character on everyone's mind here. Where are we going to put Irori? She's going to end up in core. She tier 0.5. Let's go ahead, slam her right into the core. She is a fantastic anima character. She's got everything you really kind of want. She's got crowd control for you on her skill. She also offers a little bit of healing with her entire kit, whether it's her skill or her ultimate ability. And her skill also gives a nice little attack buff to your party, which is something that we really like to see on our support, since the majority of the DPSs that we're using on field hyper carry style scale off of that attack buff. So she's working well with, you know, anyone from chaos to buffing the main character, Hathor sub DPS, buffing Hotori if you're using her in those teams, obviously Shinku. Anyone that's scaling off of attack's gonna like that as well. She even has some like nice little support DPS capabilities that haven't really been fully explored yet. I bet you a lot of you guys don't even know that you have like a long press version of your attack that uses your imagination meter to do a special attack. We're not even gonna get into the I'm sheeping my entire team and going for the solo sub DPS Irori thing. A lot of people are really using her just as that support mix of crowd control, healing, and attack bonus, and I think a little bit of defense penetration in one of her passives as well, and she's fantastic there. She also has a sort of similar buff to what we've seen before with Blossom type characters, where whether it's like duping the Blossom effect itself, like with Gunmom Jinwan, where you're getting an extra flower, or making them shoot faster with the form of like Haniel, or not Haniel, that's the Nali. She has a mix of both of them. She has that clone flower, and it comes out, and I think it shoots like every 0.5 seconds, which is a big deal because it allows you to really sort of min-max the value of the next character we're going to be talking about in the form of Shinku. Now, these two characters really work well together because of the better version, an even better version as far as Shinku's concerned, of the Blossom enhancement passive that Irori has, as you're able to basically brain dead your rotation and make sure that you're getting that Blossom hit on a Remora target to proc charge very easily with Irori. It's one of the easiest things that you can have set up for the charge passive that Shinku does have, and Shinku is someone I'm going to be slapping right in tier 0. I had her in tier 0 before Irori was released, and Irori makes Shinku even stronger than what she was before. On my free-to-play account, which I think I have like one dupe of Shinku on that one, which is giving me like a 30% damage bonus because I'm using the A6 there. Check it out. There's videos on the channel where you're just like beating the bosses in training like one ultimate. It's like, okay, like it's okay, sure fam. So Shinku the playstyle might not be for everybody. If you're having a hard time filling up your cycle gauge and you think she's weak, you're probably playing her incorrectly. You really want to be doing that, what we call it the 8-stack, 4-stack rotation with Shinku there, where you get 8 stacks of Menacing Gaze, hit the enemy one time, wait for 4 stacks while you're aura farming, how cool you look walking around the monster, right? Hit it again, fills up your cycle meter, fills up the Shinku gauge from 0 if you just do 2 hits, 1 at 8-stack, 1 at 4-stack. Go into Irori, use Irori skills, go into the main character, use the main character skills, swap into your Lakshana character. You're going to have Remora up with the Blossoms active, and you're going to have that clone flower shooting really fast as you go right back into Shinku, pop the ultimate, and just do a crazy metric ton of damage, right? So Shinku is T0, and I think if you have these two characters together right now, you're probably very easily able to beat basically anything in the game, unless you're getting one shot trying to do like the highest difficulty, like high tier anomalies where you're playing Dark Souls. All right, so these two characters are 1000% in T0 here, and so this might, you know, be like, okay, well, a lot of people were using Nanali in the Shinku teams. What about Nanali? Is Nanali finally gonna fall down to tier 0.5? We've seen Hato's power creep, you know, Pridwin out here, and I'm gonna say this about Nanali. Nanali didn't get any weaker in this patch. She still has all of the teams she was in before, whether you're doing like the straight up Blossom team with Nanali, with the likes of Hotori. You can also do like a new little like mono Blossom squad as well if you want to. She even got a new teammate in the form of Irori. So if you're a Shinku skipper, but you're thinking about maybe picking Irori up, maybe you don't have access to Hotori herself, you can make a little team that looks like Irori plus Nanali plus you know, like Gunmom Jinwon in like the main character, and go like mono Blossom this way, where all of your Blossoms are spawning 2 times as many because of Gunmom Jinwon. They're all shooting twice as fast because of Nanali, and then you also have crowd control, attack buffer for Nanali as well as Jinwon, and then you're also spawning those clone flowers, and then the main character's kind of making all of that come together for you there. So I think Nanali still deserves a tier 0 spot because her teams didn't get any worse than before, and she actually got like another side grade tier that you can, a team that you can use like in the same sort of tier if you don't have access to some of the missing characters for some of the most prominent Blossom teams with Nanali. You can pick Irori up and she's going to slot in there quite well for you. Now, one of my favorite characters in the game to use, used her in Blossom teams, used her in Hex teams, which might not even really be a thing yet, although, you know, with the new character coming out, we'll probably see a little bit more Hex support with the next 2 characters coming out. Gunmom Jinwon, I've had her in T0 for a long time because if you were using Blossom, she was probably guaranteed to be in your team. Even if you weren't Blossom focused, even if you were like a charged team, you could probably find a spot for her there. Competition with Irori here. A lot of the 2 things that these 2 characters do are very, very similar. They both have sub DPS capabilities. They both have crowd control. And on top of that, Irori has attack buff. Irori also heals without having to have a duplicate as well. I think that it's finally time for me to drop one of my most used characters down into 0.5, simply because the 2 main things that these characters want to fulfill in a role, extra Blossoms for more charges, more Blossom damage, they both kind of do a similar thing there. Crowd control, they both do that. Damage themselves, they both also kind of do that as well. Irori does do a pretty respectable amount of damage. Her own personal damage in her role as a sub DPS character, I won't lie, for Irori, is kind of min-maxed behind her own arc, and it's one of the most skippable arcs in the game, whereas Gunmom Jinwon's is like free, but she more than makes up for that in the fact that Irori has attack buff for your team and defense penetration, so she's really helping the team's party damage much more than Jinwon will. That being said, I do think if you're making a core Blossom team where like most of your damage is coming from the Blossom pistol reactions, Gunmom Jinwon's probably going to want to demand a spot in that team specifically, but we have so many different Cosmos plus an Anima character plus a Lakshana character, like so many different charged and Blossom teams now and variants now because we have so many different Anima teams. You can probably make one with Jinwon and not feel bad about it. Like basically any Shinku team doesn't really want Jinwon in it. Most of the non-Shinku top tier teams or top 3 element teams, you could probably fit her in there and not feel any bad about it. But if you had Irori, you'd probably just kick her out, right? If you're like, oh, I have an Nanali and a slot for one other Anima character, and you had to pick between the 2 of them, maybe you're picking Irori. So we're gonna bump her down to tier 0.5. That kind of fits the descriptions of the tiers, and I think this might be one of the first characters I've ever dropped on a tier list that we've made, which is kind of wild to me. Lacrimosa needs no more introduction. Didn't get any better, didn't get any worse than before. We did talk about how she did get a slightly new team if you're trying to make 2 different teams. It was a team for a lot of players, and a lot of people had the opportunity to use it, but you didn't really build it before, and that was because, well, one of her other cool teams, typically she's focused in there with Haniel as well as Sakiri in combination with Lacrimosa, but you could also use her with our lovely wine drinker of Hotori, But you kind of wanted to use Hotori in your Blossom teams. But if you've been using Shinku, you've been messing around with that, you kind of notice that there's not, you don't really need to use Hotori in that team. And you can actually put Hotori in that Lacrimosa, Sakiri, Hanyo team, and it is very strong. It is very powerful. You get to copy the enemy skills, you get to copy extra crowd control, you get to make sure that the Hootie's up 100% of the time. Hotori does do a lot more personal damage in this setup as well, because you're running her with both Hanyo as well as Sakiri, 2 characters buffing her attack, giving defense pen shred right on Sakiri as well, so crit damage bonus for your A6 Hanyo. And Hotori starts doing even better things in that team than she typically is in like a normal Blossom team. And with that being said, yeah, not only is Lacrimosa staying in tier 0 because she's got like a kind of a new teammate in the form of Hotori, more of a accessibility thing where like, oh, you Sakiri enjoyers can now, if you also happen to have Hotori and Lacrimosa, you actually have a really good spot for your Hotori. Works just as well. We're going to keep her at T0 just the same. Lacrimosa and Hotori both in there doing great things. And you can see just how strong they are in their role, because they are able to find other spots in teams that we typically didn't really see them want to be used in, especially in something like Train where you're making double teams. That being said, we also have a couple other characters we want to talk about here. One of the ones that I've always been a pretty strong defender of is Bai Kang, and Bai Kang gets a bad rap because like, oh, he kills me when I use him because I attack too many times. I say this every single time. I'm gonna hammer it in one more time. All right, for those of you out there, if you're using Bai Kang, you're having trouble with him, stop spamming the normal attack button. Okay, just use your skills, right? And then instead of using normal attack, he has 2 other attacks. He's got, like, if you're coming from a Genshin or something, charge attacks where you hold down one of your 2 buttons. If you hold down left click, right, or your basic attack button, he will draw enemies into you. He has spammable crowd control. You can just draw dudes into you, hit it with the skill, draw dudes into you, swap it to a support character, your other character, hit it with that skill, swap back into Bai Kang, draw them, and just keep drawing dudes into you, right? The other one is if you hold down right click on the mouse or the dash button, he will do an AoE smack attack, where he would just do a bunch of damage that way as well. And you can spam both of those. You don't need to just hit him with the Jet Li combo over and over and over. So because of just how much crowd control and utility he has, he does do good damage. And I think he'll probably potentially, even though he's more of a Scorched focused character with damage over time effects, if we see Hexed as a Psycho Reaction get a little bit more love. He is Incantation as a main DPS already, and so we can see even possibly more love for Bai Kang, and possibly even a main DPS anima character like Nanali potentially in the future get some Hexed love, but we're not talking about that right now. I think he still is 0.5 for those reasons. And I'm also going to be putting Hathor up in 0.5 because Charged as a team originally, when it first came out, until we got Shinku, honestly, the only real Charge team was like, yeah, you used Charge with like Chiz, right? Genuine, MC, and like Hathor. That was like your Charge team of choice. And Hathor was just kind of there because she was one of the only Lakshana characters, right? It was either her or Skia. And what does she do? Well, she does a little bit of support damage, right? She's got her own personal damage, and she's going to give you like a 10% crit rate buff. Is that enough? Originally, no, it wasn't enough. She was in 0.5, but ever since Chaos was released, and now in the form of Shinku plus Irori, Hathor has gotten a solid spot in 0.5. She's not, core where you're going to be, oh man, I need to be based on my teams around Hathor. But if you're building a Charge team, she is definitely a very solid option for you there, and she works in all of the Charge teams, which is something we'll talk about when we get onto the next character and also talk about Skia. But it's very important that the difference between Hathor and Skia is that Skia, even though he has like an 18-17 second duration Remora, it is not one singular Remora. He is constantly reapplying Remora, which happens to matter a lot, and this is why Hathor is in 0.5, because she works in every Charge team when it comes to talking about Chaos. Now, Chaos is big thing. He does do good damage. He's got a lot of flexibility. You can even slot him in another team or a team that has like another character who wants to be a mix of a main DPS hyper carry plus like a support DPS, burst DPS at the same time, right? A lot of you owners of Shinku who maybe have 2 dupes and you have like, what is it, like A3 plus A4, right? Where you can stay off field and come back in and just insta-cycle without having to aura farm, even though the aura farm only takes a couple of seconds. You can use Chaos in those teams as well. And a big thing about his damage comes from his enhanced Remora passive that does damage based on how long Remora lasts. And only Hathor right now can bump him up to where he needs to be. And his one downside is he basically has one singular team. And he also just got a little bit better as well because he's in a team that you can utilize like Chaos plus Hathor. You can throw in like the main character as always, and then slot in the brand new teammate for him if you want to, in the form of Irori, someone who has crowd control, who also is going to be buffing up your attack and defense penetration and all the stuff we were talking about with her before. So Chaos still does do good things. He's got that one weakness where he literally kind of only has like the one team. But outside of that, he is positioned to just do really solid damage still in Neverness to Everness. Now, there was a little bit of hate, I think, for Haniel when we went over the Pridwin tier list, and it was like, hey, we see how Hada is designing future supports. That's great. Guess what? Until there's another Psyche support that can do what Haniel does and fulfill the role she does, where she just does like basic follow-up attack damage, boosting your team's damage, and that way boosting your team's attack buff, has Nova enhancement to steal attack off the enemy, reducing the damage you take, and also increasing the damage you do, and also has crit damage buff and has increased cooldowns or reduction and good uptime on her Hootie buff with a couple of constellations, a couple of duplications, right? If you just get 2 of them, A2 on her, grab the 4-second duration increase and 4-second cooldown reduction on spawning Hootie out and using your ultimate and pausing the Hootie timer. I don't know what they were talking about. We're like, the uptime on Hootie's bad. Must be playing a different game for me, because this character is still in tier 0. She is a fantastic offensive support in any of the bottom element, like the Discord teams that we have access to right now. And you also can use her, if you know, as a fantastic support for other Lakshana characters, because she is Psyche and she is able to do the stained reaction, which is just another DPS increase. So I don't know what they were talking about. I'm gonna just kind of rag on them a little bit for that, because I thought that was just like you got bored and you wanted to talk a little bit on the Pridwin tier list. We're not doing that here though. She is still a tier 0 absolute monster of a character. A couple ones we want to bang out though, because I did just bring up like Skia. Nanali, main DPS, anima character. Don't have access to her, want to build a team that's very similar to that. Guess what? I have good news for you. This is where the T2 comes into play, where I said, hey, basically, you don't want to use this character if you don't have to, but you totally can, and they'll still fulfill that role and do it very well in those specific teams. And Mint is basically like Nanali 2.0, Nanali at home, right? She does do some other things, but I'm going to be slapping Mint right in tier 2. And another tier 2 character comes in the form of Aurelia, which is just, she doesn't have all of the support that a lot of the other main DPS characters do, simply because of the element that she is in. She's basically like in the same sort of room where like, oh yes, Chaos, you know, with enhanced for more. We need like an enhanced Stain character to really sort of start making like Aurelia pop off more, because Stain just doesn't have any support right now. And there's just a lot of elements and psycho reactions in the game that don't have a lot of support, which is why I think we're moving on to stuff like Stain enhancement and Hex enhancement in the next few patches. We'll see about that. We talked a little bit about that. If you missed those talks, you missed those streams, you know, you need to come down and slap the button so you see me make content on this channel if you're interested in talks like those. But yeah, for right now, she's tier 2. You can make her do stuff. It's cool. You can make basically every character in the game do stuff except for one character. But yeah, we're not going in like tier 1, tier 0.5. Oh, I don't want to hurt your fifis and oh, tier 1.5. She's almost that. No, she's a tier 2 character. Doesn't mean that she's unusable. It just means that we're comparing her to, oh, I hit the boss one time for 150,000 damage. You're a little bit lower than that, you know? You're a little bit lower than that. So Skia is why I jumped down to these tier 2 characters. In Skia, well, I thought about like, oh, does he move up to tier 1? Does he stay in tier 2? Does he move up into tier 1? These three have been grouped together in a lot of my tier lists since the game was launched. Skia was always kept out of tier 3 because of his element, whereas we have a couple of easy replacements for a Psyche character or a Anima character. There wasn't really a non 5-star replacement option for a Lakshana character, so he was there by default. Now that he has a very good teammate in the form of Shinku in a top tier team, does that definitively just bump him up the tier list by 1 tier? And I'm going to say absolutely not. I think he, just as a character, just happens to be usable and do the only thing that Shinku literally needs to have happen, which is just apply a long duration remore. Right? You get 1 dupe of Skia, you turn on his 4th passive that makes his like tail debuff last 12 seconds, and it allows him to just continuously proc Remora, so it lasts long enough so you can use Skia in conjunction with any Anima character in the game to get off, 2 or 3 of Shinku's enhanced skills, or if you have like Irori or Nanali, all 5 of Shinku's enhanced skills plus her passive procs inside of the Shinku ultimate. The thing that keeps him from being anywhere close to the likes of Hathor is literally, like we talked about, he does not go in every team that a Lakshana character would want to go in. He's very specifically kind of focused in on those Shinku teams. He does not work the same way that Hathor does with Chaos. If he worked the same exact way and it was like, hey man, you need the extension, he does it the exact same way, then we'd be putting him in tier 1. But because he just happens to be a guy you can throw Good Boys Grand Adventure on, throw him in a support set, throw him in a Shinku team, and you'll be using him there. Super cool. As soon as a Lakshana support comes out, an actual dedicated Lakshana support comes out, I think you won't see either of these characters, whether it's Hathor or Skia, anywhere on the tier list as soon as we get like a dedicated actual Lakshana support. Because we have the Lakshana DPS characters and we have burst DPS characters, main DPS characters in both the Cosmos as well as Anima categories. And the one thing that Lakshana really wants to have access to right now is a banging Lakshana support. And we just kind of have like a guy who exists, and I'm kind of a sub DPS and I give you crit rate, girl. So look forward to both those characters falling in the tier list as soon as a dedicated Lakshana support comes out. And hopefully it's going to be a Kane, but you know what? That would be the coolest thing, or Blackbird. I'd be cool with that, right? Moving on though, you guys know it by now. We don't have to spend too much time on it. We'll be here until the end of time. The main character is a tier 0 character still in this game. The instant cycle on just hitting your skill, I can do some reactions as soon as I want to, is a mainstay. It's a mainstay in any Cosmos element related reaction team. That's a lot of R words all at the same time, but it's true. It's true. You guys have seen it. You guys have felt it. Man, I want to make another team that's with my other Anima and my other Lakshana characters, but I don't have access to a second main character. I don't know what to do. How many times have you seen that question on the internet? I'm using my MC already. What can I put in my other Cosmos team? Nothing, dude. Nothing compares. Nothing compares. She's like literally like she drives the game, or he, whatever. They drive the game to the point where like I would almost say, even though the only thing they allow you to do for the most part, they do some other stuff, buff and attack and stuff as soon as they get A6, is do the instant cycle reactions. They drive the game for the top 3 elements for reactions, and it just doesn't feel anywhere near the same way. So one of the best characters in the game, absolutely phenomenal. Level them up, you're gonna love them. Mine's still like level 60, and I don't have like a lot of effort put into them. And it's still like the best character on my account as far as doing rotations and decimating bosses with just a full team build. Chiz, if you want to see my full breakdown on Chiz, listen, Chiz is a tier 1 character. She is solid in her own right. Her numbers are extremely amazing. Once you get her to A3 to A6, she's got some of the highest boosts and damage that you can get out of awakenings and duplication effects across a lot of characters, especially some of the base ones, just because it's like, get more grain, your grain percent damage is better, blah blah blah, your RNG is better. She's very easy to gear. You don't need crit rate. She just wants health and crit damage, and damage percent bonus, right? And that's kind of all she wants. The problem with Chiz is that she's got a really high floor for damage, but when you come into I'm building teams around characters and synergies and you know, Nova enhancement and charge enhancement, all these other different things we have where like, oh yes, they definitely totally on purpose made Irori and Nali, you know, work extremely well with Shinku's charge passive and all these attack buffers and all this stuff that exists in Neverness to Everness. There's not a lot of ways to support her, right? All the attack buffers we talked about several of them already, right? Haniel, Irori, soon to be Sakiri, all these different characters you can buff your attack and stuff. She doesn't work with any of that stuff. She doesn't work with any of that stuff. She just kind of wants to be in a charge team. And the big one here, since you're sticking with it, that I've solidly, even at A6, I think at A6, I used to have her in tier 0.5. At A6 now, compared to like A0s and stuff for most of these characters, I have to compare her to, I hit alt one time with Shinku, which happens like 3 seconds after the battle starts, and the boss is dead. Versus, yes, I did a couple 100,000 damage. You're not 1 tier away. You're not half a tier away. I'm gonna put you 1 tier away. All right. You're lucky you're 1 tier away. But yeah, there's a lot of things that could happen that make her better, right? She just doesn't have any supports that boost Cosmos damage and crit damage a bunch and all this other stuff, right? She just kind of wants to be a hungry, I need my ultimate all the time character. I can hit for a couple 100,000 damage. It's super cool. And you have to compare that to the same amount of damage some of these other characters can do in that time frame. And once you have a fully invested team, she does fall off in comparison because she doesn't have the benefit of like fully utilizing the benefits of having 3 other characters to bump up your hyper DPS in any significant fashion. And one of the saddest things that I found out, one of the things I wanted to do was like pop my ult here on Chiz, have the super giga hold version of my skill, spin to win, do all the cool stuff, and have it be copied by Hotori, and you can't even do something cool like that. So I'm gonna have to leave her down in tier 1 for that reason. Sakiri, very similar to the mix of like Haniel as well as Irori up here. Crowd control, attack buffs. If you have access to 1 dupe of Sakiri, on top of that, you can get another 30% of her base attack as an attack buff. You have 2 versions of crowd control. You have draw and crowd control. You have the ultimate crowd control. You have the ability to just kind of eat some enemies too if you're struggling for time in that fashion as you're growing up. I don't usually use that move where you just kind of hold the button down and vacuum people up, but she also got like defense ignore debuff on enemies as well. She's got a bunch of offensive utility in her kits, and she is very good for that reason. So an excellent attack buffer. And one of the main things that the chaos related elements down in the bottom had over the blossom related Cosmos reactions on the top was the chaos related. They had 2 giant giga attack buffers that were just insane. And Anima didn't really have anything like that. And now Irori is giving that to Blossom as well, which is a big thing. I don't know why I'm going back to Irori, but it's just that good, I guess is what I'm saying. It's why it's so notable that we talk about it for both of these characters. And that is where they definitely belong. Your boy, this guy, Edgar, get him out of here. He can wear Irori's new arc, which is the most skippable arc of all time. If you're playing Edgar, you're probably a mobile player, and stop doing that. And if you're an Edgar player, you want some survivability, I got 2 better characters. I got 2 better characters for you. All right. And the first one I'm going to talk about here is going to be Fadia. Now, Fadia is a difficult one for me to place. A lot of the times I want to put her up in tier 0.5. A lot of times I want to put her in tier 1 right now. I'm going to leave her in tier 1 while also talking her up and being like, oh, she's so good though. So Fadia, she is very easy to build. You put a lot of HP on her and she does 2 very big things for you. She's got a lot of mitigation where she draws that damage into her. You can heal it up a little bit over time with some of her passives as well. And then on top of that, she also does give you a pretty sizable AoE damage with her Nova enhancement buff, right? Every time Nova ends, it does AoE damage based on, you know, Fadia's HP or Fadia's max HP. And you can do cool stuff with that. So she is, I think, I don't want to say side grade, but more of like a user choice, right? Like, okay, well, I want to use like Haniel in my team. A lot of the teams that we're making, you're only using like one psychic character a lot of the times in them if you're using psychic element characters. And it's like Haniel's the offensive version and Fadia's the defensive version. And a Haniel is just the go-to. But if you're like, hey, man, I am playing on mobile, or I don't dodge that well, or I kind of want to, you know, I'll clear it, you know, 20, 25 seconds slower, but I just won't ever die, right? Fadia is going to be the girl for you there. And the reason why she's not higher, if that was, you know, the main thing, the reason why she's not higher is just like she doesn't really need to be in those teams. But as soon as we start getting, and they're very similar to Aurelia, more characters who are like full-on Lakshana supports or other kinds of psyche characters, or maybe like a full-on like straight support Discord character at some point, where you want to do like the double psyche, double Discord team. That's my favorite team for Aurelia, is something like Lacrimosa plus Haniel plus Aurelia plus Daffodil, and you just Nova enhancement, Nova enhancement, Nova enhancement, Nova enhancement, Nova enhancement. It's a very cool team. It's a very fun team. I don't think it is as good as some of the other teams that we talked about. If you're using Lacrimosa and Haniel and stuff, you might as well just throw in like Sakiri and Hotori and just clear things infinitely faster, and time stopped, and the enemies are crowd controlled, and things die so fast. You got hit a couple of times, but it doesn't matter. You don't need the mitigation anyway. So I think she's a good character. She's got room to grow, and I'm going to leave her in that tier 1 for the time being. Another character who's going to have room to grow, but for right now, I'm going to leave them where I had them before, is going to be Adler. Adler is very similar in that ranking for Fadia, but not as good as Fadia is. He is the more defensive option, right, of Sakiri. You're looking for an incantation support character. Giga Hyper offensive version is Sakiri. More defensive version is Adler. The thing is, as outside of Adler's shield, and like he can, you know, reduce, he's got his like a little enhancement passive that like it does 3 different things, like reduce, it increases the damage you do in 3 different ways basically. Someone's gonna leave it down in the comment section below. It's a good passive though, right? But he's got the barrier, and he's basically got that, and then you have to build him for damage himself. You have to invest into like a defense stacking, crit chance, crit damage build. He does do good sub DPS damage. Or you can just put Sakiri in your team and have like 9,000% attack buff and crowd control things and defense down and all this other stuff. And it's like, honestly, if you have access to Sakiri and you're just looking for one incantation support, you're probably just using Sakiri, and the gap is a whole 2 tiers difference on this. Remember, 2 tier, like we said, you can use them to replace them, and you'll do a fine job at that. But if that's the only thing that character is really doing, and that's the only team that character exists in, they're a tier 2 character there. Now, probably we'll see some maybe better teams for him if we're looking towards more hexed-focused characters in the future, right? We'll probably get a hexed-focused incantation DPS, probably get a anima hexed focused support character. Then we need like an anima hexed focused DPS character. Potentially he'll get some love there. Now the last one here is Daffodil. Daffodil is a great character if we're rating her at a 0, which is what all of these characters have been rated officially on this tier list for. We've mentioned things that make them better if you have them as far as awakenings go, but that's not why I listed them where they were. Daffodil at A0. She's a fine character. She's a cool character. She does do good things. You have to hit the buttons a lot, especially if you're using her own arc efficiently. She's fine. One of the main things when the game came out, she was tier 0 because she was the only chaos character. But with the ease of access, the ease of building, the just strict damage difference, and the flexibility in team style options that existed and were created once Lacrimosa was released, you don't have to play Lacrimosa Gig Equip Swap. You can play Lacrimosa in Discord. You can play Lacrimosa in Double Psyche. You can play Lacrimosa in the weird team we just talked about with like Hotori and stuff as well. And if you try to do the very similar thing in all of those different teams that Lacrimosa can be used in with an 8-0 Daffodil, it's gonna feel like a full tier's difference worth of damage. Honestly, you're gonna be clearing slower. It's gonna be more hectic to play. But once you get a couple of dupes for her, where you get 2 different passives for her, where it buffs up the passives and break damage that she does do, she is pretty insane. Now, I do think as soon as we get more break intensity, break support, that is the one thing that she does have access to that no one else does. So she really goes in on doing damage when break happens. I think she might get bumped up to tier 0.5, but since we're strictly rating her on A0 right now, I'm gonna have to put her in the tier 1 slot for you guys there. I know this is a lot of tier 0 core characters, but also you got to keep in mind that number one of them is up here strictly because off of one skill and how busted it is for the most part, because instant cycles is crazy, right? And then we have the 3 DPS that kind of like make the game go around right now: Shinku, Nanali, and Lacrimosa. You can't go, 4, my bad, Chaos. The 4 DPS is in here, right? The best Chaos DPS, the best Lakshana DPS, the best Cosmos DPS, and the best Anima DPS. All of their teams are very, very, very good, and they're within, you know, pretty similar clear times on a lot of different stuff out there. Then we have the god tier supports as well, right? You have Irori, who's brand new, Sakiri, Haniel, and Hotori. Hotori's a little bit different than these other 3, but the copying skills, the having a bunch of burst damage, and not a lot of people talk about it too. They forget. Like, if you were to talk about like how much damage per second is Hotori's burst? Well, damage per second times stopped. So really the damage per second that it's infinite damage per second, technically. What you really have to compare Hotori to is what would another support in that slot do for me in that team. And Hotori does do a lot of damage, like we talked about, in this very offensive, hyper-focused Haniel, Sakiri, Lacrimosa, Hotori team, that it slaps. You just put a bunch of nightmares on stuff, attack buff everybody, right? You've copied all those skills, wrap back around, pop the ultimate, and while time stopped, pop them all again, you're good to go, right? It's an insane amount of damage, because even though she takes field time, doesn't take actual time. So she's a very, very, very good character for that reason, and you can just feel the power of a well-invested Hotori. With that being said, I know there's a ton of T0s, but these are kind of the 9 characters the game's kind of just forced and built around right now. And they're all just that good. So let me know what you think about it down below. God bless, and I'll catch you guys like the video or whatever in the next one. Take care.